Ghost of Sparta, from mortal to myth. In the ancient world, where gods walked among mortals and myth-shaped reality, one man's journey would reshape the very fabric of divinity itself. This is the story of Kratos, warrior, father, god-slayer. A tale written in blood across two pantheons, spanning decades of rage, loss, and ultimately, the hard-won path toward redemption. Part 1. Before the Ashes.
The Marked Warrior and the Prophecy. Long before Kratos became the Ghost of Sparta, before the ashes of his family turned his skin pale as death, there existed a prophecy that would set the entire Greek pantheon on edge. The oracle had foreseen it. A marked warrior would bring about the downfall of Olympus itself, not through the resurgence of the imprisoned Titans, those ancient beings who had warred against the gods in ages past, but through the actions of a mortal marked by destiny. In the heights of Mount Olympus, Zeus, king of the gods, wielder of lightning and ruler of all creation, heard these whispered prophecies with growing dread. The cycle of patricide haunted him. He himself had overthrown his father, Kronos, who in turn had usurped his own father, Uranos. The pattern was as old as time, and Zeus understood that the sins of the father would forever cast shadows upon their sons. But Zeus was not one to accept fate passively. If a marked warrior threatened his reign, then that warrior must be found and eliminated before prophecy could take root. In the mortal realm of ancient Greece, in the brutal military state of Sparta, two brothers trained together beneath the harsh Mediterranean sun. Kratos and Deimos, both demigods, though they knew it not, dreamed of joining the Spartan army, of proving themselves worthy of the warrior caste that ruled their lives. Kratos was fierce and disciplined, already showing the makings of a formidable soldier. But it was his younger brother Deimos who bore distinctive birthmarks across his skin, strange markings that set him apart. When Zeus ordered the hunt for the marked warrior, it was Ares, the god of war himself, who descended upon Sparta with his sister Athena. The god of warfare, consumed by ambition and his own designs for Olympus, noticed Deimos's unusual birthmarks and believed he had found the prophesied threat. With an army of centaurs, Ares invaded Sparta and seized the young boy. Kratos, still a child himself, tried desperately to save his brother. He launched himself at the god of war, a mortal child attacking divinity itself, a futile gesture born of love and desperation. Ares swept the boy aside with contemptuous ease, and in doing so struck Kratos across his right eye, leaving a permanent scar that would mark him for life. Deimos was dragged away, delivered to Thanatos, the god of death himself, who imprisoned the boy in the domain of death, where he would be tortured for years beyond counting. The gods had made their move to prevent prophecy, but in their cruelty, they had sown the seeds of their own destruction. Zeus had taken the wrong brother. In memory of Deimos, and in grief that would never fully heal, Kratos had his body tattooed with red markings mirroring his brother's birthmarks. This act of remembrance, of refusing to let Deimos be forgotten, would ironically fulfill the prophecy. Kratos had marked himself as the warrior who would destroy Olympus. The making of a warrior. Years passed. Kratos grew into manhood within Sparta's merciless military machine. The city-state bred warriors from birth, discarding the weak, forging the strong into instruments of war. Kratos excelled at this brutal craft. He rose through the ranks with a combination of tactical brilliance and savage effectiveness in battle. His prowess earned him command of elite Spartan forces and eventually the rank of general.
Despite the violence that surrounded him, despite the loss of his brother that haunted his dreams, Kratos found something the philosophers claimed warriors could not possess: love. He married a woman named Lysandra, and their union produced a daughter, Calliope. For a time, amidst the constant warfare and bloodshed, Kratos had a family. He was not merely a killer, not simply a general leading men to their deaths. He was a husband, a father, a man with something to protect beyond honor and glory. The comic series that expands upon this era reveals that when Calliope fell gravely ill with a mysterious plague, Kratos undertook a dangerous quest to find ambrosia, the healing potion crafted by Asclepius, the god of healing. He fought through Tartarus itself, battling Ares' loyal subordinates who sought to use the ambrosia to resurrect their fallen master after his eventual death. Kratos' determination, his willingness to venture into the depths of the underworld for his daughter, shows that beneath the warrior's hardened exterior beat the heart of a father who would sacrifice everything for his child. This period, though brief in the grand timeline, matters profoundly. It establishes that Kratos was not born a monster. He was shaped into one through manipulation, betrayal, and the machinations of gods who cared nothing for mortal suffering. The bargain that damned a soul. Kratos' Spartan army was formidable, but even the finest warriors of Greece had their limits. When they encountered the barbarian tribes of the east, vast hordes of fierce warriors led by the barbarian king Alric, Kratos found himself outnumbered and outmaneuvered. His soldiers fell around him. The battle turned into a massacre. Kratos himself faced death at Alric's hands, the barbarian king's blade moments from ending the Spartan general's life. In that moment of desperation, Kratos did what countless mortals have done throughout history when facing obliteration. He called upon the gods. Specifically, he called upon Ares, the god of war, and made a vow that would echo through eternity. In exchange for victory, for the power to destroy his enemies and save his men, Kratos pledged his life and service to Ares. The god of war heard this plea and found it interesting. Ares had long harbored ambitions beyond his station. He resented Zeus's authority, chafed under his father's rule, and dreamed of overthrowing the king of the gods. But to challenge Zeus directly would be suicide. Ares needed a champion, a weapon, a mortal warrior of such devastating effectiveness that he could be wielded against Olympus itself. In Kratos, Ares saw potential. The sky above the battlefield tore open. Ares descended, a god of living flame, larger than mountains, his very presence causing the earth to tremble. The barbarian army froze in terror as divine power manifested before them. Without mercy, without hesitation, Ares began slaughtering the barbarian forces. Thousands died in moments, torn apart by divine fury. Only King Alric was spared, left alive for Kratos to claim. From the sky descended two harpies bearing gifts from the god of war. They presented Kratos with the blades of chaos, twin curved swords wreathed in eternal flame, attached to chains that the harpies then seared into Kratos' forearms. The metal melted into his flesh, binding the weapons to him permanently. The pain was excruciating, but the power was intoxicating. With the blades of chaos, Kratos decapitated Alric, claiming his first victory in service to Ares. This moment marked the end of Kratos as a Spartan general serving Greece, and the beginning of his transformation into Ares' instrument of conquest. The bargain had been struck, and the price would prove far higher than Kratos could have imagined. The three blood tests.
Ares had plans for his new champion, carefully designed tests to forge Kratos into the perfect warrior. The god of war, along with the Furies, primordial beings who enforced oaths sworn to the gods, devised 3 blood tests that Kratos would have to pass. The first test, the spilling of enemy blood, was already complete. Kratos had proven his prowess in battle, his willingness to kill without hesitation when commanded. The second test proved equally easy to fulfill. Kratos was ordered to slaughter innocents, and in his growing bloodlust, fueled by the power of the Blades of Chaos and his service to Ares, he did so without question. Across Greece, Kratos and his Spartan companions left a trail of death. Men, women, children, anyone perceived as defying the glory of Ares fell before Kratos' blades. The warrior was consumed by rage and power, becoming more monster than man with each passing battle. But the third test, the spilling of the blood of loved ones, required more subtlety. Ares understood that familial bonds would always be a weakness, a tether preventing Kratos from becoming the ultimate weapon. And so the god of war engineered a moment of horror that would define all that came after. The village, where everything ended. Kratos received orders to attack a village dedicated to Athena, Ares' rival among the Olympians. It was meant to be another massacre in a long line of massacres, another demonstration of Ares' power through his champion's actions. But Ares had secretly transported Lysandra and Calliope to a temple within the village, placing them directly in Kratos' path. As Kratos entered the temple, Ares cast a spell upon him, amplifying his bloodlust to unprecedented levels. Kratos could not see clearly, could not think past the overwhelming need to kill. He became a whirlwind of blades and fury, cutting down everyone in the temple. When the red mist finally lifted from his vision, when the battle rage subsided, Kratos looked down at his blood-soaked hands and saw the bodies of his wife and daughter lying dead at his feet. He had murdered his own family. The scream that tore from Kratos' throat in that moment carried a grief so profound that even the gods must have felt it ripple through the fabric of reality. The village oracle, bearing witness to this unthinkable horror, placed a curse upon Kratos. She gathered the ashes of Lysandra and Calliope and magically bound them to Kratos' skin. The ashes covered his entire body, turning his flesh ghostly white, marking him permanently with the evidence of his crime. From that moment forward, Kratos would be known as the Ghost of Sparta, a pale specter of death, marked by the very people he had destroyed. Ares had miscalculated catastrophically. He believed that by freeing Kratos from the weakness of family, he would create an unfeeling instrument of war. Instead, he had created something far more dangerous. A man with nothing left to lose, driven by grief and guilt into an all-consuming need for vengeance. Kratos renounced his service to Ares. He broke his blood oath to the god of war, an act that would bring down upon him the wrath of the Furies themselves. But Kratos no longer cared about consequences. His family was gone, his soul was shattered. All that remained was the memory of what he had done, nightmares that would plague him every time he closed his eyes. Part 2. Ascension and Servitude. God of War Ascension, breaking the chains. 6 months after the murder of his family, Kratos existed in a state of broken torment. He had abandoned his service to Ares, but the god of war was not willing to simply let his champion go. The blood oath Kratos had sworn was enforced by the Furies, Megaera, Tisiphone, and Alecto, ancient primordial beings who predated even the Olympians.
They had chronicled every oath sworn to the gods since time immemorial, and they punished those who dared break such vows with eternal torment. The Furies captured Kratos and imprisoned him, subjecting him to torture designed to break his will and force him back into Ares' service. They assaulted him with illusions, making him relive his worst memories, showing him visions of his family that were simultaneously comforting and agonizing. The Furies offered Kratos an escape, a permanent illusion where he could live with Lysandra and Calliope forever, a perfect dream that would never end. For a moment, Kratos was tempted. The peace of living in that fantasy, of never having to face the reality of what he had done, called to him like a siren's song. But ultimately, Kratos chose truth over delusion. He chose to live in the real world, with all its pain and horror, rather than hide in a comforting lie. Orcos, the son of Ares and the Fury Alecto, witnessed Kratos' struggle. Unlike his mother and fellow Furies, Orcos had begun to question the morality of their actions. He saw how Ares had manipulated events, how the god of war had engineered the death of innocents in his obsession with overthrowing Zeus. The Furies' blind loyalty to Ares troubled Orcos, and in Kratos, he saw a victim rather than an oath-breaker deserving of punishment. Orcos helped Kratos escape the Furies' prison and revealed the truth. Ares had always planned to use Kratos as a weapon against Zeus. The entire relationship had been manipulation from the start. Orcos also explained the only way Kratos could truly break free from his oath. Orcos himself would have to die. As the keeper of Kratos' oath, as long as Orcos lived, the bond between Kratos and Ares would persist. Orcos wanted an honorable death, a release from his role in his father's schemes. He begged Kratos to kill him. Kratos hunted down and killed the Furies one by one. Megaera fell first, her death fueling Kratos' determination. Eventually, all three primordial enforcers lay dead, but the oath remained. Kratos had to face the final terrible choice. Though he initially refused, Kratos ultimately granted Orcos his wish. He ended the young god's life, and in that act, the blood oath binding Kratos to Ares finally shattered. But the cost was devastating. The seal that Orcos had placed within Kratos, dampening his memories of the village, broke alongside the oath. The full, vivid, unfiltered memories of killing his wife and daughter flooded back into Kratos' mind with crystal clarity. God of War. Ascension ends with Kratos leaving Sparta, still drowning in grief, but now with a desperate hope. Perhaps the other Olympian gods could make things right. Perhaps if he served them, atoned for his sins through service, they could lift the burden of his nightmares and give him peace. This desperate hope would drive Kratos for the next decade of his life, as he became a servant to the gods of Olympus. God of War. Chains of Olympus. The price of service. 5 years into his decade of servitude to the Olympian gods, Kratos had become their errand boy, undertaking impossible tasks in exchange for the promise that his nightmares would eventually cease. He was sent on missions across the Greek world, fighting monsters, battling enemies of the gods, doing whatever was required of him. Each completed task came with the hope that maybe this would be enough, that the gods would finally grant him the peace he sought. The events of Chains of Olympus begin when Kratos is dispatched to the city of Attica to defend it against an invading Persian army. He kills the basilisk, terrorizing the city, and defeats the Persian king. But even as he achieves victory, something far worse occurs. the sun god Helios disappears from the sky. Without Helios's light, the world falls into darkness, and the Olympian gods themselves fall into an unnatural slumber. Kratos is ordered to find Helios and restore light to the world. His journey takes him into the underworld, where he encounters Persephone, the wife of Hades and queen of the underworld. Persephone, bitter over her forced marriage and eternal imprisonment in the realm of death, has orchestrated a plot to destroy the world by using the power of Atlas to attack the pillar of the world, the structure that holds up the Greek cosmos. In the underworld, Kratos encounters something that nearly breaks him, a vision of his daughter Calliope in Elysium, the paradise where virtuous souls reside. She is happy, peaceful, and she calls out to him. Persephone offers Kratos the chance to stay with Calliope forever, to lay down his blades and live with his daughter in the afterlife. For Kratos, this represents everything he has desired since that terrible day in the village, to be with his family again, to find peace, to escape the guilt that consumes him. But Kratos understands the cost. If he remains in the underworld, Persephone will succeed in her plan to destroy the world, meaning Calliope's existence in the afterlife would be extinguished along with everything else. As much as it destroys him, Kratos makes the agonizing choice to leave his daughter behind. He abandons his chance at happiness to save the world, knowing that in doing so, he ensures Calliope will continue to exist in the afterlife, even if he can never be with her. Kratos defeats Persephone and returns Helios to the sky, restoring balance to the world. The gods commend him for his service, but abandon him immediately afterward, leaving him alone on the suicide bluffs of Athens, too weak to even move. This moment crystallizes a truth Kratos is beginning to understand. The gods do not care about him. They use him, command him, and then discard him without gratitude or concern. The emotional wound inflicted by choosing duty over family, by leaving Calliope in the afterlife, never fully heals. It adds another layer to Kratos' tragedy, another sacrifice made in service to gods who would never repay his loyalty. The original god of war, the breaking point. 3 weeks before the game begins, Athena, goddess of wisdom, approaches Kratos with what she promises will be his final task. The city of Athens is under siege by Ares himself. The god of war has grown tired of Zeus's rule and seeks to establish his own dominance by destroying Athena's beloved city. Zeus, bound by ancient laws, cannot directly intervene when one god wages war on another. But Athena has found a loophole. She can use a mortal champion. That champion is Kratos. Athena tells Kratos that if he kills Ares, the gods will finally forgive his past and free him from the nightmares that torment him. After 10 years of service, after countless tasks and battles, this will be the end. All Kratos has to do is achieve the impossible. Kill a god. No mortal has ever killed a god before. The divine nature of the Olympians makes them functionally immortal, beyond the reach of mortal weapons. But Athena reveals the existence of Pandora's box, an artifact of immense power hidden within a temple on the back of the Titan Kronos, who wanders the desert of lost souls for eternity, as punishment from Zeus. If Kratos can reach the box and open it, he will gain power sufficient to challenge Ares. The task is monumental, but Kratos accepts without hesitation. He has endured too much, sacrificed too much, to refuse now. The original god of war follows Kratos on this quest, taking him across a mythological Greece filled with monsters, gods, and challenges that would break lesser men. Kratos navigates the ancient depths of Athens encounters the Titan Atlas, who had been holding up the earth as punishment for his role in the Titanomachy, and eventually finds Kronos wandering the desert. The Temple of Pandora rests upon the Titan's back, and Kratos ascends to claim his prize. Throughout this journey, the game uses flashbacks to reveal Kratos' backstory, his family, the bargain with Ares, the nightmares that plague him. Just as Kratos reaches Pandora's box, Ares intervenes. The god of war hurls an enormous pillar from Athens across impossible distances, impaling Kratos and killing him. The Spartan warrior falls to the underworld. His quest seemingly ended in failure. But death is not done with Kratos. He refuses to accept defeat, driven by sheer determination and the need to complete his mission. Kratos fights his way out of the underworld, not for the first time, and certainly not for the last, encountering a mysterious grave digger who speaks cryptically about the warrior's destiny. This gravedigger is heavily implied to be Zeus himself, in disguise, watching his son from afar. Escaping the realm of death, Kratos retrieves Pandora's box and opens it. Athena descends from Olympus to deliver the Blade of the Gods, a divine weapon she has crafted for this specific purpose. Kratos absorbs the power of Pandora's box, or so he believes, and grows to godlike proportions. He confronts Ares in Athens, and a legendary battle ensues. Ares attempts to break Kratos psychologically by forcing him to relive killing his family, trapping the Spartan in an illusion where his wife and daughter are replaced with shadowy versions that Kratos must kill over and over. But Kratos' will proves stronger than Ares anticipated. He breaks free of the nightmare, reclaims the blades of chaos, and engages the god of war in single combat. The battle tears across Athens, god against man, immortal against mortal. In the end, Kratos proves victorious. With the blade of the gods, he strikes Ares through the heart, achieving what was thought impossible, a mortal killing a god. Ares' dying words attempt to justify his actions. "I was trying to make you a great warrior." Kratos' response is cold and final. "You succeeded." With Ares dead, Kratos believes he has finally earned his reward. He approaches Athena and asks her to remove his nightmares as promised. Athena's response crushes him. The gods will forgive Kratos' sins as they vowed, but they cannot take away his memories. No one, not even the gods, can make Kratos forget what he has done. The nightmares will remain with him forever. Destroyed by this revelation, Kratos climbs to the highest cliff in all of Greece and throws himself into the Aegean Sea, attempting suicide as his only escape from the guilt that consumes him. But even this release is denied. Athena pulls him from the water and brings him to Olympus, placing him upon the throne of the god of war. Kratos has become what he killed. He is now the Olympian god of war, whether he wants it or not. God of War. Betrayal. Seeds of destruction. Though largely forgotten due to its mobile game origins, God of War, Betrayal provides important context for what follows. As the new God of War, Kratos returns to Sparta, finding his home under siege. Before he can strike down the attacking forces led by the giant Argos sent by Hera, an unknown assassin kills Argos first, framing Kratos for the murder of a fellow Olympian champion. Syrinx, son of Hermes, arrives with a message from Zeus. Cease the search for the assassin and end this warfare. Kratos, in his growing contempt for the gods' commands, kills Syrinx. This act of defiance signals to the Olympians that their new god of war cannot be controlled, that Kratos is becoming a threat rather than an asset. The seeds of Zeus's betrayal are planted in these moments.
The king of the gods begins to fear his son, begins to see in Kratos the fulfillment of the prophecy he had tried so hard to prevent. God of War, Ghost of Sparta, the brothers return. Between the first and second God of War games, Kratos undertakes a journey that will provide crucial context for his eventual war against Olympus. Despite ascending to godhood, Kratos finds no peace. He is haunted not only by his wife and daughter, but also by memories of his brother Deimos, taken by Ares so many years ago. When Kratos learns that Deimos might still be alive, imprisoned by Thanatos in the domain of death, he becomes consumed with the need to rescue his brother. Athena tries to redirect him, sending Kratos to investigate disturbances in Atlantis. But ultimately, the Ghost of Sparta cannot be dissuaded from his personal mission. Kratos' journey takes him to see his mother, Callisto, in Atlantis. The reunion is bittersweet. His mother attempts to reveal the truth about Kratos' father, but before she can speak the name Zeus, she is transformed into a monster by a curse. Kratos is forced to kill his own mother, another family member dead by his hand, though this time the blame lies solely with the gods. Before dying, Callisto tells Kratos that his brother lives, imprisoned in the domain of death. Kratos must also confront King Midas, whose golden touch has become his curse, turning everything he loved, including his daughter, into lifeless gold. It serves as another mirror for Kratos' own damnation, power that destroys everything it touches. When Kratos finally reaches the domain of death and finds Deimos, the reunion goes horribly wrong. Deimos has been tortured for decades, his mind twisted by pain and resentment. He blames Kratos for not saving him when they were children, for not preventing his abduction. The two brothers fight, their reunion devolving into violence. Before they can kill each other, Thanatos intervenes, attacking Deimos. This act finally reunites the brothers, faced with their childhood tormentor. Kratos and Deimos fight together as they once dreamed they would. But Thanatos is a primordial force, far more powerful than either brother anticipated. In the battle, Deimos is killed, dying in Kratos' arms. Kratos' anguished rage transforms into divine fury. He kills Thanatos, the god of death himself, falling to a Spartan warrior's vengeance. But the victory is hollow. Deimos is gone, another family member dead, another wound that will never heal. Ghost of Sparta ends with Kratos returning to Olympus, his bitterness toward the gods having reached a breaking point. Zeus had ordered his brother taken, Ares had struck him and stolen Deimos, and Athena had helped facilitate the abduction. The Olympians had destroyed Kratos' family twice over, first his wife and daughter through Ares' manipulation, now his mother and brother through Zeus's paranoid prophecy. The gods had taken everything from him, and soon Kratos would take everything from them. Part 3. The Fall of Olympus. God of War 2. Betrayal of the King. Kratos' tenure as the god of war proves catastrophic for Greece. Shunned by his fellow Olympians who view him as little more than a deity of human origin unworthy of his divine station, Kratos responds by doing what he knows best, waging war. He leads the Spartan army on campaigns of conquest across Greece, ignoring Athena's pleas for restraint. The other gods watch with growing concern as their new god of war spreads chaos and destruction. The breaking point comes when Kratos joins the Spartans in their siege of the city of Rhodes. During the battle, a giant eagle steals Kratos' godly power, channeling it into the Colossus of Rhodes, a massive bronze statue that comes to life and threatens to destroy Kratos' forces. The eagle is Zeus in disguise, though Kratos doesn't realize this yet. Zeus appears in his divine form, offering Kratos the blade of Olympus, a weapon of immense power. Desperate to defeat the Colossus and save his men, Kratos transfers the last of his godly essence into the sword, using it to destroy the statue. But the Colossus falls upon Kratos, crushing him beneath its massive hand. Weakened and dying, Kratos is approached by Zeus, who demands his son serve him. Kratos refuses. In that moment of defiance, Zeus reveals his true intentions. He plunges the blade of Olympus, infused with Kratos' own power, through his son's chest, killing him. As Kratos dies, Zeus stands over him and speaks words that will haunt the king of the gods. Kratos, Zeus hereby banishes you to the darkest depths of Tartarus for all of eternity. Kratos' last words before death are a vow of vengeance. But once again, death is not the end for Kratos. The Titan Gaia rescues him from the underworld and reveals a stunning truth. Zeus had betrayed not only Kratos, but the Titans as well. After the Great War between the Titans and Olympians, Zeus had imprisoned the Titans in Tartarus, condemning them to eternal suffering, despite their role as progenitors of the Greek cosmos. Gaia offers Kratos an alliance. If he can find the Sisters of Fate, who control the threads of destiny itself, he can travel back in time to the moment of Zeus's betrayal and change his fate. In doing so, he can also change the fate of the Titans, bringing them forward in time to wage war against Olympus once more. Kratos accepts without hesitation. His quest takes him across the Greek world, encountering legends and figures from mythology. He meets Prometheus, chained to suffer eternal torment for bringing fire to humanity, begging Kratos to end his suffering. He confronts the Titan Typhon, father of all monsters. He speaks with Atlas, learning more of the Titans' perspective on their war with the gods. Throughout God of War 2, Kratos' journey becomes increasingly dark. He kills Perseus, a demigod hero, and Icarus, whose hubris famously led to his own downfall. He murders Theseus, guardian of the Sisters of Fate. He sacrifices innocence to solve puzzles and open paths. The game illustrates how Kratos' quest for vengeance has made him brutal beyond measure, willing to destroy anyone and anything that stands between him and his revenge. When Kratos finally reaches the Sisters of Fate, Lachesis, Atropos, and Clotho, they attempt to stop him, rewriting fate to make him lose his battle against Ares. But Kratos fights through their temporal manipulation and kills all three sisters, seizing control of the loom of fate itself. With command over destiny, Kratos first travels back to the Titanomachy, the Great War, and rescues the Titans from their defeat, bringing them forward to his present time. Then he returns to the moment of his battle with Zeus in Rhodes. Fully powered with godhood restored, Kratos nearly kills Zeus in a rematch. But Athena, still trying to prevent the destruction of Olympus, throws herself between father and son, taking the blade of Olympus through her chest. As Athena dies in Kratos' arms, she makes a revelation that recontextualizes everything. Zeus is Kratos' father. The king of the gods killed his own son out of fear, trying to prevent the cycle of patricide from repeating. Zeus himself had overthrown his father Kronos, who had overthrown his father Uranos. Now Zeus feared his son would do the same. Athena's death is significant for another reason that won't be revealed until God of War 3. Her sacrifice transforms her into a higher form of existence, one that sees truths previously hidden from her. But in the moment, all Kratos knows is that yet another person he cared about has died because of the gods' machinations. Zeus escapes through a portal back to Olympus. Kratos follows, leading the Titans in an assault on Mount Olympus itself. God of War 2 ends with one of the most striking cliffhangers in gaming history. Kratos, standing on Gaia's shoulder, leading the Titans up the mountain toward Olympus, swearing that the age of the gods has come to an end. God of War 3, The Death of Olympus. The final chapter of the Greek saga opens with spectacle beyond measure. Kratos and the Titans scale Mount Olympus, engaging the Olympian gods in direct warfare. The sea god Poseidon confronts them first, wielding the oceans themselves as weapons. Kratos, standing on Gaia's palm, engages Poseidon in brutal combat that tears across the mountain. When Kratos finally defeats Poseidon, he kills him in graphic brutality, beating the god's face into a bloody pulp. The death of Poseidon has immediate and catastrophic consequences. The seas rage out of control, flooding all of Greece, drowning countless thousands. This becomes a pattern throughout God of War 3. Each god Kratos kills releases a plague upon the world, their deaths unraveling the natural order they maintained. As Gaia and Kratos near the summit of Olympus, Zeus blasts them with lightning, sending them falling toward the underworld. Gaia catches herself but releases Kratos, revealing a truth that devastates him. She never cared about Kratos as anything more than a tool. The Titans are using him just as the Olympians did, simply to achieve their own revenge. Kratos falls into the river Styx, into the underworld itself. There, he encounters Athena's spirit. Her death has enlightened her, granting her awareness of higher truths. She tells Kratos that to kill Zeus, he must extinguish the flame of Olympus. She also provides him with new weapons, the Blades of Exile, replacing his Blades of Chaos. What Athena doesn't tell Kratos is the full truth about Pandora's box. When Kratos opened the box, back in the first game, he didn't actually absorb the power of the gods, as everyone believed. Instead, Pandora's box contained two things: the great evils of the world and hope, the power that Athena had placed inside as a safeguard. When Kratos opened the box, he absorbed hope into his soul, while the evils escaped and infected the Olympian gods. This is why Zeus became paranoid and betrayed Kratos. Fear infected the king of the gods. This is why Poseidon became consumed with rage, why Hades was filled with hate, why Hera developed cruel jealousy. The gods were corrupted by the evils released from Pandora's box, their worst traits amplified to monstrous proportions. Kratos' journey through God of War 3 becomes a catalog of divine destruction. He defeats Hades in the underworld, stealing the god of death's soul with the very weapon Hades himself wielded, the claws of Hades. Hades' death releases all the souls trapped in the underworld, allowing the dead to return to the mortal realm and creating an army of undead. He kills Helios, the sun god, ripping the deity's head clean off his shoulders. Helios' death plunges the world into darkness, the sun disappearing from the sky. He murders Hermes, the messenger god, whose swift feet had carried him everywhere. Hermes' death brings plague upon the world, disease spreading uncontrolled. He slays Hercules, his demigod half-brother, who had always resented living in Kratos' shadow. Hercules sought the throne of God of War for himself, but falls to Kratos' superior skill. He kills Hera, Zeus' wife and queen of the gods,
whose death causes all plant life in Greece to wither and die. Each death brings Kratos closer to his father, but at the cost of Greece itself, the natural world unraveling as the gods who maintained it perish, one by one. A critical moment occurs when Kratos finds Hephaestus, the smith god, imprisoned within his own forge. Zeus had beaten Hephaestus and imprisoned him as punishment for creating Pandora's box in the first place. Hephaestus reveals that Pandora herself, created as a living key to the box, still exists, imprisoned by Zeus. Hephaestus pleads with Kratos to save his adopted daughter. Kratos initially ignores this plea, focused only on his vengeance. But as he journeys through the labyrinth to rescue Pandora, something unexpected happens. Kratos begins to see her as a surrogate daughter. The young girl reminds him of Calliope, and despite his hardened heart, Kratos finds himself caring about Pandora's well-being. This creates the central emotional conflict of God of War 3. Kratos wants to kill Zeus, but doing so requires using Pandora to extinguish the flame of Olympus, which will kill her. Kratos must choose between his vengeance and protecting a child he has come to care for, essentially reliving the choice he made in Chains of Olympus when he abandoned Calliope to save the world. When Kratos and Pandora finally reach the flame, Zeus intervenes for a final confrontation. The battle between father and son rages, with Zeus attempting to stop Pandora from sacrificing herself, while Kratos tries to protect her. In a moment of weakness, Kratos actually chooses to save Pandora, telling her they will find another way. But Zeus mocks Kratos, listing his failures, reminding him of everyone he has lost and killed. In a moment of pure rage, Kratos releases Pandora and lunges at Zeus. Pandora falls into the flame, sacrificing herself to extinguish it. Her death enables Kratos to open Pandora's box once more. But the box is empty. Zeus flees to the summit of Olympus, and Kratos pursues. Gaia emerges for one last attempt to kill both father and son, swallowing them both. Inside Gaia's body, Kratos and Zeus continue their battle until Kratos drives the blade of Olympus through both Zeus and Gaia's heart. The Titan dies, her enormous corpse collapsing onto Mount Olympus itself. Zeus appears to be dead, but his spirit emerges, attacking Kratos psychologically. Kratos finds himself in a dark void of his own guilt and rage, overwhelmed by Zeus's spiritual assault. In this moment of near defeat, Pandora's spirit appears to him, along with the spirits of Calliope and Lysandra. They tell Kratos he must forgive himself. This moment reveals the true power of hope. Kratos had absorbed hope from Pandora's box in the first game, carrying it within his soul all this time. Now he finally accesses that power, surrounding himself with a golden light that represents not just godly might, but emotional healing. With the power of hope, Kratos forces Zeus's spirit back into his body and proceeds to beat his father to death with his bare hands. The beating goes on far longer than necessary, Kratos pummeling Zeus's face in a scene that is simultaneously triumphant and deeply disturbing. The player must actively press buttons to continue the brutal assault, making the violence participatory. When Zeus finally dies, the perspective shifts to first person, showing Kratos' fists covered in his father's blood, the king of the gods' face, a ruined mess. The cycle of patricide that defined the Greek pantheon has reached its conclusion. Kratos has killed his father, just as Zeus killed Kronos, just as Kronos killed Uranos. Greece lies in ruins.
The death of the gods has brought apocalypse. The seas rage uncontrolled. The sky weeps blood. The dead walk the earth. Darkness covers everything, and all plant life has withered. The world is dying. Athena's spirit appears once more, now fully enlightened, to a higher plane of existence. She demands that Kratos return what he took from Pandora's box, the power of hope. Athena reveals her true intentions. She wants to use hope to establish herself as the supreme deity, to rule over what remains of Greece with absolute power. Kratos refuses. In a final act of defiance against divine manipulation, he takes the blade of Olympus and drives it into his own chest, impaling himself on the weapon. As he bleeds out, hope, in the form of a golden light, flows from Kratos' body and spreads across the dying world, giving humanity the power to rebuild and survive without the gods. Athena is furious, her plans thwarted. She leaves Kratos to die alone on the peak of Olympus. The camera pulls back, showing Kratos' body lying in a pool of his own blood as Greece burns around him. But when the credits end, a final scene shows that Kratos' body is gone. A trail of blood leads away from where he fell. The Ghost of Sparta somehow survived even this, though where he went would remain a mystery for years. God of War, fallen god, the wandering between worlds. The comic series Fallen God, released in 2021, fills in some of the gap between God of War 3 and the 2018 reboot. It depicts Kratos wandering through various realms, tormented by his past, unable to find peace even after accomplishing his revenge. The comic shows Kratos' internal struggle, his attempts to escape his nature as a killer, and hints at his eventual journey to the realm of the Norse gods. Interestingly, Fallen God includes references to Egyptian mythology, confirming the pantheon also exists in the God of War universe, though Kratos' time there is not depicted in detail. What matters is that Kratos is searching for somewhere he won't be recognized, somewhere he can escape his reputation as a godslayer, somewhere he might finally find peace. That search eventually leads him north, to the frozen lands where the Norse gods reign. Part 4. A Stranger in Midgard. God of War 2018. The road to Jotunheim. Many years pass, decades, perhaps even a century or more. The Ghost of Sparta has become something else, a man who lives in the woods, who hunts for survival, who has buried his past beneath snow and silence. Kratos has traveled to the realm of Midgard, one of the 9 realms of Norse mythology, connected by the world tree Yggdrasil. In Midgard, Kratos met a woman. Her name was Laufey, though she went by the name Faye. She was a warrior of immense skill, and unbeknownst to Kratos at first, she was also a Jotun, one of the giants who had warred against the Aesir gods led by Odin. Faye saw something in Kratos beyond his reputation. She knew of his past, the Greek gods he had killed, the destruction he had wrought, but she loved him. Anyway, they built a home together in the wild woods of Midgard. Kratos revealed his true nature to her, showing her the blades of chaos hidden beneath their home, weapons he could never truly be rid of. Faye kept her own secrets as well, never revealing to Kratos that she was a giant, never telling him of the prophecies the giants had made regarding him and their future son. They had a child, a boy they named Atreus, after a Spartan comrade Kratos had known in his mortal life, a warrior who believed in hope even in the darkest times. Faye wanted to name their son Loki, but Kratos insisted on Atreus, and she agreed. For years, Kratos tried to be a father while teaching Atreus to survive in a harsh world, but Kratos' past haunted him. He was distant, cold, struggling to show affection or explain his emotions. He taught Atreus to be a warrior, but couldn't teach him to be a son. Faye served as the bridge between them, the warmth in their family that kept them connected. Then Faye died. The game begins with Kratos and Atreus performing funerary rites, cutting down a tree marked by Faye, a tree she'd selected for her own cremation. Her final wish was for her ashes to be scattered from the highest peak in all the realms. This quest to honor his dead wife's final request drives the entire narrative of God of War 2018. But before they can even leave their home, a stranger arrives. He is tattooed, cocky, and seemingly invincible. He claims to be looking for someone and assumes Kratos is that person. When Kratos refuses to fight, the stranger attacks. The battle that follows is brutal and intimate. The stranger feels no pain, shrugs off injuries that would kill any mortal, and demonstrates strength rivaling Kratos' own. They trade blows through the forest, destroying trees and stone alike. Eventually, Kratos seems to kill the stranger by snapping his neck and throwing him off a cliff. But as Kratos and Atreus soon learn, death doesn't stick for gods. The journey begins. Father and son. Atreus is young, perhaps 11 years old, and he doesn't know the truth about his father. He doesn't know that Kratos is a god from another pantheon, doesn't understand why his father is so cold and distant. Atreus struggles with his own identity, experiencing strange symptoms, coughing fits, fainting spells, that Kratos dismisses as simple weakness. To reach the highest peak, they must navigate the Lake of the Nine, a massive body of water at the center of Midgard. At its heart stands Tyr's temple, named for the Norse god of war, a peaceful deity unlike Ares or Kratos. Tyr's temple serves as a gateway to the other realms through the Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that connects all 9 realms via Yggdrasil. On their journey, Kratos and Atreus encounter Brock and Sindri, dwarf brothers who serve as blacksmiths and become allies and occasional sources of comic relief. They provide weapons and armor, upgrade gear, and offer insight into the workings of the 9 realms. The pair also meet the Witch of the Woods, a mysterious woman living in a turtle house that can travel through realms. She is knowledgeable, powerful, and clearly more than she appears. She helps them acquire items they need for their journey, though she seems to have her own agenda. A critical moment occurs when they encounter Jörmungandr, the world serpent. This massive creature circles all of Midgard, large enough that its body extends beyond sight. Fascinatingly, Atreus can understand the serpent's language, ancient giant tongue that shouldn't be comprehensible to a mortal child. Jörmungandr seems to recognize Atreus, looking at the boy with what appears to be familiarity and sadness. Mimir later explains that according to prophecy, during Ragnarok, the Norse apocalypse, Jörmungandr will battle Thor, and the clash will be so violent it splits the world tree, sending the serpent backward through time. This implies the world serpent is actually from the future, and that it recognizes Atreus because of events that haven't happened yet. Freya and the Curse. The Witch of the Woods eventually reveals her true identity. She is Freya, a goddess of the Vanir and former queen of the Aesir. She was married to Odin but left him after learning the depths of his cruelty. Odin cursed Freya in retaliation, binding her to Midgard so she can never leave, and also stripping her of her warrior spirit. Freya had a son named Baldur, and in Norse mythology, And in the game, she loved him so much she cast a spell to make him invincible to all threats. Every plant, every animal, every substance in the 9 realms swore an oath not to harm Baldur, but this blessing became a curse. Baldur lost the ability to feel anything. No pain, no pleasure, no sensation of any kind. He became numb to the world, and it drove him to madness. Baldur blamed his mother for this, and Freya lived with the knowledge that her attempt to protect her son had instead robbed him of his ability to truly live. This backstory becomes relevant when we learn the stranger from the beginning of the game was Baldur. He wasn't looking for Kratos at all, he was looking for Faye, the last giant. Under orders from Odin, but with Faye dead, Baldur has been pursuing Kratos and Atreus, believing they know where the giants are hidden. The truth about Atreus. A critical turning point occurs when Atreus falls gravely ill. His symptoms worsen dramatically, and he collapses, seemingly dying. Kratos, desperate to save his son, travels to Helheim, the realm of the dead, to retrieve an ingredient needed for a cure. In Helheim, Kratos encounters visions from his past. He sees Zeus again, hears his father's voice mocking him. Mimir, whose severed head Kratos has been carrying as a companion and guide, warns Kratos not to engage with the visions, as Helheim torments its visitors with guilt and painful memories. But for Kratos, the past is always present. Kratos retrieves what he needs and returns to Freya, who can cure Atreus. But she tells Kratos the truth. The cure is only temporary, unless Atreus learns what he really is. The boy is sick because he believes he is mortal, when he is not. Atreus is a god, son of 2 divine beings, Kratos from the Greek pantheon and Faye, who was a Jotun. Kratos must tell his son the truth.
When Atreus wakes and learns he is a god, his personality changes dramatically. The humble, nervous boy becomes arrogant and reckless. He believes himself superior to others, starts treating even Kratos with disrespect, and becomes violent. This behavior terrifies Kratos, who sees in his son the same path he once walked, the path of a god who believes himself above morality. A crucial scene occurs where Atreus, in his newfound arrogance, kills a helpless man. Kratos grabs his son and roars, "We are gods. We are responsible for the consequences of our actions." It's a powerful moment because Kratos is trying to teach Atreus the lesson he himself learned too late. That power without restraint leads only to ruin. Eventually, Atreus' arrogance subsides, especially after learning more about his father's past. He begins to understand the weight his father carries, and their relationship deepens. The secret revealed: Atreus is Loki. Throughout their journey, Kratos and Atreus overcome numerous challenges. They travel to Alfheim to retrieve the light, to dispel the black breath blocking their path to Jotunheim. They rescue Mimir from imprisonment by Odin, freeing the smartest man alive who then guides them. They fight and defeat Magni and Modi, the sons of Thor, which further angers the Norse gods. Finally, they discover that the highest peak, their destination, is not in Midgard at all. It's in Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. But the path to Jotunheim has been sealed. Only at Tyr's temple, using Tyr's secret gateway, can they access the giant realm. When Kratos and Atreus finally reach Jotunheim, they find it empty. The giants are gone, seemingly wiped out by Thor's genocide years earlier. But the giants left something behind, murals depicting prophecy. The murals show Faye's story, they show her meeting Kratos, they show their journey together with Atreus.
Everything that has happened was prophesied by the giants and painted on these walls. Faye knew exactly how events would unfold. Then Kratos sees something that shakes him, a panel showing what appears to be his own death, with Atreus cradling his body. But before Kratos can process this, the biggest revelation occurs. Atreus asks what his mother wanted to name him, and Kratos finally admits the truth. Faye wanted to name him Loki. The game's final scene shows Atreus/Loki coming to terms with his identity as the giant's champion, the one prophesied to play a crucial role in Ragnarok. The screen fades as father and son return to Midgard. But a post-credits scene shows Thor arriving at their home in the middle of Fimbulwinter, the 3-year-long winter that precedes Ragnarok. The door knocks, the screen goes black. Part 5, Ragnarok comes. God of War, Ragnarok, the twilight of the Aesir. 3 years pass. Fimbulwinter, the long winter that was prophesied to last 3 years before Ragnarok, has arrived. The realms are covered in snow and ice. Kratos and Atreus survive hunting and training, but they are also hunted. Freya seeks vengeance for Baldur's death. Kratos killed Baldur at the end of the 2018 game to prevent him from killing Freya. Despite understanding why Kratos did it, Freya's grief overrides her reason. The game begins with an attack by Freya, which Kratos and Atreus barely repel using magical protections. When they return home, they find their wolf Fenrir dying. Atreus tries to save him, and in his grief, the boy's magic manifests. Unexpectedly, he transforms into a bear and attacks Kratos, unable to control his new shape-shifting ability. Kratos subdues his son without killing him, and Atreus changes back, shocked by what he's become. They bury Fenrir, and Atreus unknowingly transfers the wolf's spirit into his knife, preserving Fenrir's essence. Then Thor arrives. The god of thunder is not the heroic figure from Marvel Comics. He is brutal, cruel, a killer who drowned countless giants at Odin's command. Thor enters their home accompanied by Odin himself, king of the Aesir, the All-Father. Odin is not the wise, benevolent god of legend. He is manipulative, obsessed with knowledge to the point of madness, and willing to sacrifice anything to prevent Ragnarok. He offers Kratos a deal. Stop interfering in Aesir business. Stop looking for Tyr, the Norse god of war thought to be dead, and Odin will leave them alone. He'll even keep Freya from attacking them. Kratos refuses. Thor demands satisfaction for the deaths of his sons Magni and Modi. He and Kratos fight, and their battle is tremendous. The god of thunder proves to be Kratos' equal. Their clash, destroying the surrounding landscape. The fight ends in a stalemate, with Thor actually growing to respect Kratos' strength. But Odin's offer to Atreus is more insidious. He offers the boy what he craves most, answers about his identity as Loki, about the giants, about prophecy and destiny. Atreus, desperate to understand his place in the world, is tempted but ultimately refuses for now. Sindri and Brock appear, using magical means to transport Kratos, Atreus, and Mimir to Sindri's house, a pocket dimension between realms where they'll be safe. Here they discover Tyr alive, not killed by Odin after all, but imprisoned in a mine in Svartalfheim. They rescue him, but Tyr is broken, traumatized, a pacifist who refuses to fight. Atreus' secret journey. Atreus has been keeping secrets from his father. He's been exploring giant shrines, learning about prophecy, discovering that a champion and a god of war will be central to Ragnarok. Atreus believes this means he must do something to prevent his father's death, as depicted in the Jotunheim mural. Eventually, Atreus admits he needs to go to Asgard. not to spy as Kratos suggests, but because Odin has something Atreus wants: answers. Against everyone's advice, Atreus makes his way to Asgard, where Odin welcomes him warmly. In Asgard, Atreus meets several important figures. Heimdall, the guardian with the ability to read minds and see the future, who treats Atreus with contempt until Thor intervenes. Thrud, Thor's daughter, who is kind to Atreus and dreams of becoming a Valkyrie. Odin reveals his obsession, a mask that, when completed, will allow him to peer into a rift in reality and gain infinite knowledge. He believes this knowledge will allow him to prevent Ragnarok entirely. The mask is in pieces, and the runes on it are in a language only Atreus can read. Atreus begins helping Odin find the mask pieces, rationalizing that if he can steal the completed mask, he can prevent Odin from using it. But he's being manipulated, slowly turned into Odin's pawn. Kratos' parallel journey. While Atreus is in Asgard, Kratos undertakes his own quest. He and Freya, having reached an uneasy truce, search for the Norns, the Norse equivalent of the Fates. Kratos wants to know how to save Atreus from Heimdall, who the Norns prophesied will kill the boy. When they find the Norns, the encounter is philosophically fascinating. The three sisters of fate explain that they don't control destiny. They simply see the choices people will make based on their nature. All prophecy is just prediction based on character. This means Kratos can change fate simply by changing his choices. This is a profound shift from the Greek fates, who could literally manipulate destiny. The Norse understanding of fate is more about inevitability based on personality rather than predetermined outcomes. To kill Heimdall, Brock suggests forging a new weapon, the Draupnir spear, created from Odin's ring Draupnir and imbued with the power to duplicate itself. The weapon is forged by the Lady of the Forge in Svartalfheim, and during this quest, Brock learns a terrible truth. He died years ago, and Sindri secretly resurrected him, but could only recover part of his soul. This revelation will have tragic consequences. The mask and the betrayal. Atreus completes the mask and discovers the final pieces in Niflheim, but before he can retrieve it, Sif, Thor's wife, appears and tells Thor to kill Atreus. Atreus barely escapes using a magical means Sindri had given him. Back at Sindri's house, Atreus delivers the mask to what they believe is Tyr. But Brock has grown suspicious of Tyr's behavior. The god has been acting strangely, uncharacteristically aggressive. When Brock confronts Tyr, the god reveals himself to be Odin in disguise. He had been impersonating Tyr the entire time, infiltrating their group. Odin stabs Brock through the chest, fatally wounding the dwarf. The group manages to drive Odin away and reclaim the mask, but Brock dies in Sindri's arms. The loss devastates Sindri, who blames Atreus for bringing Odin into their safe space. This death changes everything. Freya, who had been reluctant to embrace violence, now commits fully to starting Ragnarok. If the apocalypse is coming anyway, better to face it on their terms and ensure Odin pays for his crimes. Assembling the armies? Kratos and his allies split up to recruit forces for the battle against Asgard. Freya goes to Vanaheim to gather the Vanir and the Valkyries. Kratos and Atreus travel to Muspelheim to convince Surtur, the fire giant, to become Ragnarok itself, a living embodiment of destruction prophesied to destroy Asgard. Angerboda, a young giant woman Atreus had met earlier in Ironwood, brings Fenrir's spirit, now in a new wolf body, and Jörmungandr. When all forces are assembled, Kratos sounds Gjallarhorn, Heimdall's horn that signals the beginning of Ragnarok. The armies march on Asgard. The final battle. The siege of Asgard is epic in scale. The armies of multiple realms converge on the Aesir stronghold, but they encounter a problem. Odin has placed Midgardian refugees as human shields, civilians forced to fight or die. Kratos makes a crucial decision. Rather than slaughter innocents, he orders a tactical approach. He sends allies to evacuate the Midgardians while Freya and her brother Freyr attempt to slow Ragnarok, the living fire giant, from destroying everything. Sindri, consumed by grief, arrives alone to destroy Asgard's wall at its weak point, the structural flaw that the giant Hrimthur had built in years ago. Atreus joins him, and together they breach the defenses. Thor confronts Kratos one final time. Their battle is tremendous, but Kratos ultimately defeats the thunder god. In a moment that defines his growth, Kratos spares Thor's life, demonstrating mercy he never would have shown in Greece. Kratos speaks to Thor about breaking the cycle of violence, about changing for the sake of their children. Thor, moved by these words, actually lowers Mjolnir and refuses to continue fighting. Odin appears and demands Thor finish the battle. Thor refuses. No. In response to this defiance, Odin kills his own son, driving Gungnir through Thor's chest. Thrud arrives just in time to see her grandfather murder her father. The revelation of Odin's true nature is complete. The end of the All-Father. Kratos, Atreus, and Freya confront Odin together. The All-Father transforms into a raven form, attacks with his spear Gungnir, and proves to be the most formidable enemy Kratos has faced in Midgard. The battle rages, and eventually, through combined effort, they defeat him. Odin, dying, makes one final plea to Atreus. He begs the boy to use the mask, to look into the rift and see the infinite knowledge within. For a moment, Atreus is tempted, but then he makes a choice that defines who he is. He destroys the mask. The rift pulls the shattered mask into itself and closes forever. Odin's obsession, his life's work, is destroyed. Atreus uses a special marble to trap Odin's soul, preventing the All-Father from escaping to cause more harm. Atreus gives the marble to Freya, telling her she should decide Odin's fate. But before Freya can make that choice, Sindri appears. Without a word, the grief-stricken dwarf takes the marble and crushes it, destroying Odin's soul completely. It's a dark moment. Sindri, who had always been gentle and kind, commits an act of absolute finality born from unbearable loss. Surtur/Ragnarok destroys Asgard while Freyr sacrifices himself to give everyone time to escape. The realm of the Aesir falls, but the other realms survive. The prophecy is both fulfilled and subverted. Ragnarok happened, but not as foretold. The apocalypse was controlled, directed, and the outcome was different from what the giants had painted on their murals. Epilogue. Many futures. In the aftermath, Kratos and Atreus find a new mural in Jotunheim, hidden behind the one they saw before. This mural shows Faye destroying the original prophecy, recognizing that some destinies should be shaped by choice rather than predetermined. She left them multiple possible futures, allowing them to determine their own path. Atreus tells Kratos he needs to leave. There are other giants out there, survivors, and Atreus wants to find them and help them. He also wants to discover who Loki truly is, separate from his father's shadow. Kratos understands. This is the moment he has been preparing for, letting his son go, trusting him to make his own choices.
They part on good terms, father and son, but walking different paths. The epilogue shows Kratos, Freya, and Mimir traveling the realms, checking on their allies. In Niflheim, they find the real Tyr, who had been imprisoned by Odin in a secret location. Tyr is free and begins wandering the realms to meditate and heal. In Svartalfheim, they attend Brock's funeral. Sindri is there but cannot forgive them for Brock's death. He leaves without speaking to them. In Helheim, Mimir speaks with Hresvelgur, promising to find a successor as ruler of the realm of the dead. In Alfheim, Thrud finds her father's hammer Mjolnir and vows to make Thor proud. In Vanaheim, Freya and Freyr's allies celebrate their victory, though tinged with sorrow for those lost. In Jotunheim, Angerboda cares for Fenrir in Atreus' absence. The 9 realms are healing. A new age has begun, one without Odin's tyranny, without the threat of Ragnarok, but also without the certainty of prophecy. Valhalla DLC, The Trial of Memory. In the post-game DLC, Kratos discovers a realm within a realm, Valhalla, where fallen warriors test themselves endlessly. Here, Kratos confronts his past in a more literal way, facing shades and memories of everyone he has killed or failed. The DLC serves as Kratos' personal therapy, forcing him to reckon with his past, to find forgiveness for himself, and to understand that he is more than the sum of his worst acts. It's a fitting epilogue to Kratos' journey. Not a physical battle, but a psychological and spiritual one. The Ghost of Sparta, who began his journey consumed by rage and guilt, ends it with hard-won wisdom, capable of mercy, and finally at peace with who he was and who he has become. Conclusion: The Measure of a Man. The complete story of God of War is ultimately about transformation. It begins with a man selling his soul for power, manipulated by gods who view mortals as tools. It continues through decades of rage, vengeance, and destruction. Kratos burning down an entire pantheon in his quest for revenge. But the story doesn't end there. In Midgard, Kratos learns that power without wisdom is simply destruction. He learns that being a god means nothing if you cannot control yourself. Most importantly, he learns that the cycle of violence can be broken, that prophecy can be challenged, and that redemption is possible even for someone who has committed unforgivable acts. The relationship between Kratos and Atreus forms the emotional core of this transformation. Kratos tries desperately to teach his son to be better than he was, to learn from his mistakes without having to repeat them. And in teaching Atreus, Kratos teaches himself. He rediscovers his humanity by trying to preserve his sons. The lore of God of War is rich with mythological references, philosophical questions, and moral complexities. It asks, can a monster become a man? Can vengeance ever truly satisfy? What does it mean to be a god? How do we break cycles of abuse and violence that span generations? The Greek saga showed us the consequences of unbridled rage. The world itself nearly ended because one man could not let go of his anger. The Norse saga shows us the possibility of change. That same man learning to be a father, a mentor, and ultimately a better person. It's a story about how the gods are not defined by their power, but by their choices. Odin had infinite knowledge and still chose tyranny. Zeus had supreme authority and still chose fear. Ares had the power of war itself and still chose manipulation. Kratos had the power to destroy pantheons, but In the end, he chose his son. He chose mercy over vengeance when he spared Thor. He chose truth over comfortable lies when he revealed his past to Atreus. He chose to let his son leave rather than forcing him to stay. These choices are what make Kratos' story ultimately heroic despite its dark beginnings. He may have been the ghost of Sparta, the killer of gods, the destroyer of Olympus, but by the end, he is simply a father who wants his son to be better than he was. And perhaps that is the most powerful lore of all, that no matter how far we fall, no matter what we have done, we retain the capacity to change, to grow, and to choose a better path forward. The God of War saga is complete, but Kratos' story continues. His future remains unwritten, shaped not by prophecy but by the choices he and his son will make. And in a universe where gods and monsters exist, where destiny and fate have claimed so many, that freedom to choose is perhaps the most divine power of all. The ghost of Sparta walks forward, no longer haunted by what he was, but defined by what he has become. A father, a friend, and finally, a God who understands that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to spare. Afterward, the mythology behind the myth. The God of War series takes tremendous liberties with both Greek and Norse mythology, reimagining ancient stories through the lens of a modern narrative about violence, trauma, and redemption. Understanding the real mythological foundations enriches appreciation for how the games adapt and transform these ancient tales. In actual Greek mythology, Kratos was a relatively minor figure, a personification of strength and power, servant to Zeus, who helped bind Prometheus. The game's version expands this minor deity into a full character with agency, emotions, and a complex backstory. The Titanomachy, the war between Titans and Olympians, happened as depicted in mythology, with Zeus leading his siblings to overthrow Kronos and the older generation of gods. The games accurately reflect the brutality of these myths. Zeus really did imprison the Titans in Tartarus, and the original stories are filled with violence, betrayal, and intergenerational conflict. Pandora's box is based on the actual myth, though in the original it was a jar, pythos, not a box. A mistranslation that persisted through history. The games cleverly use the concept of the box, containing both evils and hope, staying true to the mythological framework while adding their own interpretation of what those evils do to gods. The Norse mythology adaptation is even more dramatic. The actual Loki of Norse myth is complex, sometimes helpful to the gods, sometimes harmful, ultimately destined to lead the giants against Asgard during Ragnarok. The games position Atreus/Loki as potentially this figure, but also give him agency to choose a different path. The world serpent Jormungandr really is Loki's son in Norse mythology, along with Fenrir the wolf and Hel, the goddess of the underworld. The games play with these familial relationships while adapting them to fit the narrative. Ragnarok in actual Norse mythology is indeed the twilight of the gods, a catastrophic final battle where most major figures die, including Odin, Thor, and Loki, before the world is submerged in water and eventually reborn. The games honor this concept while changing the outcome, showing that even ancient prophecies can be challenged. What makes God of War's use of mythology effective is that it respects the core themes of these ancient stories, the cycles of violence, the flaws of divine beings, the inevitability of change, while crafting something new from those foundations. The games understand that mythology was never static.
It was always being reimagined by new storytellers for new audiences. In retelling Kratos' story, the God of War series becomes part of that tradition, adding another layer to myths that have been told and retold for thousands of years. And perhaps that is the ultimate lore lesson, that stories, like people, can always transform, always adapt, always find new meaning in changed contexts. The gods may die, but the stories endure.